Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beat your price. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beat your price.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
ABC Wednesday.
Y'all complain all day. We want books. We want paper towels in the classroom. Bet you want raises, too.
I'm still waiting on the paper towels.
Abbott Elementary returns with the new season.
We asked the district for more after-school programs. They gave us $50 for class pets instead.
Critics cheer. Abbott Elementary continues to be one of the funniest and most beloved shows on TV.
What y'all doing out there?
Taking bribes?
Proud of y'all.
Abbott Elementary. Season premiere Wednesday, 9:30, 8:30 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Keep Watch Pass on the It's Not That Bad podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. So, when I say monster to you, it's kind of scary, kind of frightening, right? But it doesn't have to be, because there are a number of movies out there that they got monsters in them, but it's for the whole family. And here to join me, not a monster, my lovely wife, Carrie. Carrie, how are you doing?
Wow, thanks for clearing that up. I don't know. When I think of monsters, why is it I think Cookie Monster or like a big blue furry...
My pet monster.
Yeah, right? I don't know, something you can cuddle.
I mean, normally when I think monsters, I think kaiju because I'm me. I think big Godzilla-like creatures and... I mean, yeah, I'm sure we could watch some of them with the family, but we're talking about family-friendly monster movies. Now, you're the one that brought this to the table. So when you were making your picks, what were some of the criteria that you were actually setting out for yourself?
Well, I had a particular movie in mind that I wanted to talk about, but more on that later. I was interested to find that Jurassic Park was popping up. When I searched up monster movies, and I'm like, since when are dinosaurs lumped in with monsters? I get the whole Godzilla being considered a monster.
Exactly. Quite kaiju-esque. And the other thing, too, is that a dinosaur is kind of its own classification. Yes, you could argue that Godzilla is dinosaur-esque to a point, but no, he's an irradiated sea monster that terrorizes Tokyo. So, hence, monster. I know me personally, because when I was doing my research and, trying to look up what would qualify as a quote unquote family friendly monster film, a lot of movies that were coming up were they're aliens or they're ghosts. And I didn't look at aliens and ghosts as monsters.
Right. Or zombies.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Which means that I, by my own definition, I'm ruling out aliens. I couldn't actually pick E.T. So this was one of those films that I took it off my list because initially I'm like, oh, that is part of the 80s childhood trauma pack. There's, but then no, he's an alien. He's not a monster. So I took it off my list. I still have issues with E.T.
How about Monsters versus Aliens?
Well, see, that would have worked. Seeing how Monsters was kind of in the title, that could have qualified because they were monsters. They weren't actually aliens. They just happened to be monsters on Earth that originated through scientific experimentation on Earth. So I would have allowed that one. But E.T., thankfully, because every now and then a movie comes out and you watch it and you realize I'm traumatized. I'm traumatized and E.T. traumatized me.
E.T. traumatized you?
Oh, dear God. When was the last time you watched E.T.?
Well,
The scene where they have like the house quarantined and everyone's in like the hazmat suits and the camera's all shaky and you got like the kid in ET and he's like all pale and
I grew up having a stuffed ET and it was my best good friend.
No. E.T. the stuffy is fine and all well and good. E.T. the movie was traumatizing as you, Steven Spielberg. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, just because I have a bike with a basket and want to put my E.T. stuffy in it.
And that I would be fine with. Although, by the by, E.T. is Star Wars canon. There's a meme out there that explains it. And if you watch The Phantom Menace, there's a little ship there with ETs in it in the Senate. So yeah, ET is apparently Star Wars canon. But here's what we're going to do. Now that you know the criteria that we kind of set up for ourselves, we're going to pick 3 movies each. A keep, a watch, and a pass. The keep is one that we hold in absolute monstrous high regard. The watch is one that we wouldn't hide away from the kids and we'd still enjoy it. And the pass is ET. I mean, the pass is one that we would just skip entirely. I'm not over ET. I'm not.
I think we know Jay's pass.
No, because ET was an alien, so I couldn't pick it.
Oh,
so
okay.
By my own criteria, I saved myself. But we're going to get to our keep movie first. So what did you go with for that keep film?
This was my motivation. This was the reason that I pitched this, because I have been dying to talk Little Monsters with Fred Savage and Howie Mandel playing what I could only explain as like a blue gypsy punk monster that lived under Fred Savage's bed and would only come out at night to have like crazy good fun. He was a fun monster. He wasn't, scary by any means. I mean,
God, no.
His like crazy, like one long earring. And like I said, he was like a punk monster. And you know what? That movie just made me smile.
You know, it's not going to make you smile.
What?
44% tomatometer.
I know. And I've been itching to talk about this movie. So here we are.
All right. We'll put it on the whiteboard.
Yes.
Like, I remember Howie Mandel when he was getting a lot of movie roles. And when I think family friendly, Howie Mandel is one of those actors that kind of comes to mind. Like, even his stand-up act was pretty damn clean, all things considered. Like,
my dad brought me to a Howie Mandel stand-up not concert, but comedy show.
That's a concert.
And I remember he was doing the voice of Bobby. And he was dropping F-bombs like every second word. And I remember looking over at my dad and going, This is entertainment. You decided to bring me here.
What the are you talking
about? Right? But you know what? All good, right? Like, you're right. I mean, he was just so enjoyable, and I like to think family friendly in spite of, a few F-bombs here and there.
I was going to say, I think we've dropped more F-bombs in this episode about family friendly movies than we've dropped on any other episode of Keep Watch Pass.
Well, clearly I grew up watching Howie Mandel, so
if you're wondering why there's so many beeps in this episode featuring family friendly films, you've met us now, and now you know why we're so traumatized between your dad bringing you out to the F-bomb show and me having to watch E.T. in the theater as a kid. Don't mess with people of our age.
I remember
listeners.
seeing it in the drive-in. I think my grandparents actually brought me to like a double feature, and E.T. was the second, so I had to wait up until close to midnight to watch E.T.
Yeah, but I love the drive-in movie theater, though. Drive-in movie theater rocks.
Love it.
My name is Lorne Michaels. I'm the producer of Saturday Night.
The whole night?
Yeah, the whole night.
Based on the insane true story of the first time Saturday Night went live.
You ordered a llama?
Yeah, we all decided it was much funnier than a donkey.
Saturday Night, rated R, now playing exclusively in theaters.
Reporting live from under my blanket, I'm Susan Curtis with Duncan at Home. Breaking news, pumpkin spice iced and hot coffees are back. I'll pass it to Mr. Curtis with his blanket for the full story.
That is so right, Susan. You know, it's never too early to get in a spicy mood. I'm talking cinnamony goodness that's so tasty, people don't want to leave their blankets either. Back to you.
No, back to you.
All you.
The home with Dunkin' Pumpkin Spice is where you want to be.
Oh, such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com's primetime kickoff event. Save up to 50% off select styles, plus doorbusters. Rules and restrictions may apply.
My Keep is actually a film that has been covered on It's Not That Bad before, and it's got monsters in the title, so it definitely qualifies. Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, which, okay, Scooby-Doo film, fantastic.
Right, Raggy?
Right, Raggy. The films, the live action remakes, written by James Gunn. Yeah, that James Gunn. You have possibly the ultimate cast in a Scooby-Doo film, right? You've got Sarah Michelle Gellar. You've got Freddie Prinze Jr. Linda Cardellini is the perfect Velma. She is fantastic. Matthew Lillard is the only person in the world that should ever play Shaggy. Because he's like, if ever there was anyone born to play a role, it's Matthew Lillard as Shaggy. He has that down pat. Like, there's no question. Down pat. I can overlook some of the monstrously questionable CGI. You see what I did there, right? But the funny thing is, if you grew up watching Scooby-Doo cartoons, you kind of knew what you were getting with every episode. And then with the James Gunn films, it's they knew exactly what they were doing. Exactly what they were doing. By the way, this one was also directed by Raja Gonel, who also directed the Smurfs films, the live action ones. So clearly you had a franchise in very capable hands taking care of the IP that they were handling. And I know there was talk about eventually doing a Scooby-Doo 3 film. I would love to see it because you still have everyone from the cast around to be able to do it. And they don't look like they've changed at all. Like, you could put them in those costumes and it would feel like the Scooby-Doo films from 1 and 2. Like, it'd be perfect. But yes, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. Like, you were a Scooby-Doo kid growing up, right?
Yes. Well, actually, I was just thinking about it more. Yogi Bear. I would love to see that franchise.
Hey, boo-boo. I think it's time we had a movie on the big screen, eh?
Right? Or when the Flintstones went live action, that was... they tried.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
They tried.
Why? Why would you bring that up?
Well, because, that was my era growing up. You mentioned Smurfs, Flintstones.
Not only did they crap on the Flintstones, but they made the B-52s do that song and it was bad. It was bad. But no, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed is, for lack of a better term, a cinematic Scooby snack.
Nice.
For my watch film, I'm going with yet another sequel that has monsters in the title, so it qualifies. Monsters University.
Nice.
And I may be standing out on a limb when I say this, and I may be, completely on my own in this opinion, but to me, Monsters University is the superior Monsters film.
I agree.
Okay, so I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
I completely agree. They needed the first one.
You had to create the world, absolutely.
But it was more enjoyable, and I think it was funnier.
I wonder, though, and I'm just going to pontificate on this one. Do you think we find it funnier and better because we grew up in an era that had Revenge of the Nerds? Because when you think about the plot of Monsters University, where you have this frat versus frat, and one of the frats is like trying to keep their charter and trying to not get kicked out of the school, so they have to beat all the other frats in this competition. It's freaking Revenge of the Nerds is what it is.
I think so. And it does. It has like the cast of misfit monster characters that I absolutely love. I mean, yeah.
I think the other thing too is that with the first Monsters film, Monsters Inc., you had Mike and Sully, and it's all good. You know, you had Steve Buscemi in there as well. Can't go wrong there. But a lot of the story centered around the human that they brought into the monster world. And I feel like I have to remind everyone when I say this, very similar to films like the Transformers films, the monsters are the freaking story. They're the ones in the title of the film. So with Monsters University, you spent a very, very, very small bit of time in the human world, and everything else was monsters. And that's what it needed. I know I'm going to catch flack when I say this too, but even Cars 2, right? Cars 2 took the world and expanded it. Monsters University, albeit a prequel, took the world and kind of expanded on the mythology. Probably in a better way than Cars 2, because I think Monsters University is much more highly regarded than a sequel like Cars 2. But for a sequel, for a Pixar sequel, I mean, yes, Toy Story 2, if I remember correctly, sits at about 100% tomatometer. Like Toy Story 2 is the pinnacle of knocking a sequel out of the park. Monsters University, not that far behind when you're looking at where it came from. But now over to you. What's your watch pick?
My watch is Beetlejuice. and I'm talking the original.
Yes. Not Beetlejuice, just Beetlejuice. Right? I said it 3 times.
Oh, well, it was nice knowing you.
Yep, juice is on the loose.
We watched it again recently before going to see the sequel, and watched it with our youngest. And just, you know what, the humor, it was so enjoyable. It was so like, sure, it was, could be a little raunchy at times, but that's Beetlejuice. That's the character. And you know what? It was just the original you can't mess with.
Mm-hmm.
And, more on that later, but I wish that it had remained on its own, a standalone. Leave Beetlejuice alone.
I was going to say, does it technically qualify as a monster film? But then again, you also have that weird sand snake going on when they open up the kitchen door and they can't get out of the house. So, yeah, there's monsters in there. You could easily qualify that.
It did pop up. When I searched family-friendly monster movies, it was on the list.
Yeah, I mean, Beetlejuice is one of those weird classics. And, Tim Burton directing aside, and the fact that you have Michael Keaton, who can be the craziest mofo in the afterlife, and frickin' Batman, and Mr. Mom, all in the same decade. Talk about an actor with range. It's frickin' Michael Keaton. But this is just another proof that 80s PG, if you went to go see a PG film today and then you took that frame of reference and went back to the 80s, you'd be sitting there in the theater going, what is happening? This is not PG.
It's so true. Like, really, we come from a broken generation.
Right?
Where, so much, like, we let so much slide. But you know what? We were tougher. Okay, I'm going to go on a diatribe here. We grew up tough, right? where you said, who is it you said that raised us, like...
What, E.T.?
Oh, E.T. raised us. Like, I'm sorry, but we grew up in the time of, like, I don't know, 2 Live Crew and Dr. Dre. Like, they raised us. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, but if you're going to look at music here, in the same Christmas, the first 2 albums I got for Christmas, in the same Christmas, I got Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil, and Debbie Gibson Out of the Blue, both on cassette. And that just goes to show my screwed up musical taste. And then, of course, like you think about much music back in the day, right? And you would have like music from like Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. And then the next beat, you've got like Poison and Warrant. We're built differently. You grew up in the 80s. You were built to survive. That's pretty much it. Like, and you sit there and you look at, oh, we don't want to, no, we can't put that in. That would be PG. We can't. Your PG 2024. Go back to the 80s and figure out what PG was for. Put the guidance back in parental guidance, okay?
You know what? And that's the crazy thing is at the age we're at now, we have kids that are way more adult than we are because
okay, that's not really saying much though.
because of what was socially acceptable growing up for us versus now. Oh, you can't say that. Well, okay, but
yeah, but you said it 20 minutes ago, Mom.
Like, seriously, when did everything become so offensive? And I laugh because there's a meme of Rodney Dangerfield, right? And it was basically like, oh, you can't say that. That's offensive. And he's like, I can, I will, and I will again. You know, like.
I'm offended that you're offended at this point.
Right?
No. 80s PG films hit differently. And I think that's why some of them stand the test of time. I mean, I will admit, there are some films that came out in the 80s that if you took a look at that script then and you put it into like an exec's hands today, wouldn't get made. There are jokes in the Police Academy films that would not fly today by any stretch of the imagination. You sit there and you watch it and go, you just put that on TV. Oh my God. Bravo. Kudos, I think. But I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact that they were funny 80s films. And yes, there are some sensibilities that were wrong then. You know, they're wrong now and they were wrong then. But for the most part, a film like Beetlejuice, it's still PG. I don't care what you say. Now I'm curious. Now you've done this full diatribe as to what, 80s PG was versus today's PG. What's your past film for family-friendly monster movies?
Okay, so I wrote 2 different movies down, and I think I'm going to go with my first pick, and that is, and I'm gonna. This is my disclaimer. I loved the first one, but I have to pick Goosebumps 2.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, maybe it was that it didn't have enough Jack Black. It didn't have enough of him playing R.L. Stine. I mean, sure, in the end, right? But it focused on a completely different family, a completely different group, and they really kind of did the whole Halloween thing to death, I think, in this movie. And I don't know, there was just something, first of all, Jack Black as R.L. Stine was freaking phenomenal. I loved Slappy. I still do. I mean, come on. How can you not? Right? But the first movie was just so good that I think the second one, I can't help but compare and contrast. And I don't know, it didn't quite hit the same.
I find it funny that you're saying it didn't have enough Jack Black, so it wasn't as good. This a day after we watched Borderlands, and we're like, shut the up, Jack Black.
Yeah, but come on, that's the character.
It's completely the character. And I think the problem with Goosebumps, at least 2, is that you bring to the big screen like a fantastic, world-beloved franchise. The name alone, you instantly have images of Slappy and other characters that come to mind. It was kid horror before really this was the gateway to horror films is what it was for Goosebumps. And they were able to, with that first film, bring it to a family-friendly level. Because that's the thing. You can't take Goosebumps and turn it into a frickin' slasher flick. There's no way. You can't turn this into Tales from the Crypt or, Creep Show or something like that. You can't do that. Goosebumps has always been and always should be family friendly, kind of on that edge again, right? But Hollywood doesn't know when to leave well enough alone. And you did it once, you did it good, walk away.
Okay, but on that note, even some of the standalone TV series shows, I think just they sat better with me as a young kid growing up. This was my gateway to horror movies. This was my young adult reading, loved me some R.L. Stine. I would literally just sit, especially on a dark and stormy night.
This answers so many questions.
I would sit and I would literally read an entire R.L. Stine horror novel.
So
in a day.
Between Goosebumps horror books and Howie Mandel F-bomb fests, I understand you so much better now.
This was my childhood, right? And this is why, I can't be easily offended. And this is why we get along so well.
All right. For my past film, I'm going with a piece of my own childhood that was served up with a side order. When I was a kid, there was one book that was read to me many, many times, and we read it to our kids many times. That book is Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, no. Oh, I saw that listed and I thought of you. I was like, oh, no.
Because that
Here we are.
Film is boring AF. I was not enthralled at all. And the funny thing is, too, I remember, as a kid, being fascinated by this book because the artwork was so well done. And it just had that it appealed to me. And then you start reading it as a parent and you're like, man, was I a messed up kid as I'm reading this kind of thing. Let the wild rumpus begin. And then they try to make a movie out of that book. Because really, there's not a lot to that book except for kid ends up in some weird forest with a bunch of monsters, dances around quite a bit, and then falls asleep and is back home. That's pretty much how the hell are you supposed to make a 2-hour film out of that? They tried it.
Isn't that in line with, you wake up and it's all a dream? Like that is the cop-out ending for most adventure books.
I mean, I want to give credit where credit is due. The look of the film is fantastic, but I found it boring and plodding. And it made me sit there go, did I read the book right as a kid? Is my memory tainted from, because every time you think about something that you loved as a kid, then you go back and you watch it as an adult and you're like, oh, I was a dumbass kid, wasn't I? But it doesn't change how you felt about it in youth. It just means it doesn't stick. Some things stick and some things don't. Where the Wild Things Are as a film definitely did not stick. And I feel bad about that. This was a piece of my childhood. And visually, they did very well. Story-wise, it's about as paper thin as the book itself. Which makes me sad in a way.
Oh boy, I need to go back and rewatch E.T.
You on your own there.
Oh.
I'm gonna go watch a Howie Mandel stand-up while you traumatize yourself with E.T. All right, Carrie, thank you so much for this. Now, please remind our listeners what your keep, watch, and past picks are for family-friendly monster movies.
Even in adulthood, I am keeping Little Monsters. I'm always watching the original Beetlejuice over the second, and I am passing on Goosebumps #2.
All right, I am keeping Scooby-Doo Monsters Unleashed. I am watching Monsters University, and I am passing on the film version of Where the Wild Things Are. Because you know what? I think I can still hold the book to heart. that piece of my childhood doesn't change. The film I'll pass on, though. Carrie, thank you so much for this. And to you, our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of talking about family-friendly monster films. Now, you guys know the drill. If there is a topic that you want us to cover on Keep Watch Pass, or a movie you want us to cover on It's Not That Bad, hit us up on social media at Not That Badcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out our other shows, including There Can Only Be One, Spin, Shuffle, Skip, and Grading on a Curve. Until next time, she's Carrie, I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is Keep Watch Pass on the It's Not That Bad podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.
The Kimi Kato Show, featured on Pantheon Podcasts.
The Kimi Kato Show is a weekly exploration of Japanese pop culture in all its facets. Kimi and Jeremiah, as hosts, delve into various aspects of Japanese culture, including music, food, fashion, and film, offering listeners a comprehensive and entertaining look at what makes Japanese pop culture unique and intriguing. It is your invitation to Japan.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan. I'm Doug. We're in the band Hoobastank.
Hi, I'm Takato Miyake, working for Suntory Global Spirits.
Hello, I'm Sincere from Yusenke.
Hello guys, this is Masata Kumi.
This is Chris Hart.
Hi, I am Sugizo. You are listening to Kimi Kato Show. Thank you.
Kimi Kato Show is brought to you by Evolve Entertainment Network, Pantheon Podcasts, and Radio Candy Media.